The moment my sister waved a pregnancy test in my face, something inside me finally cracked. We were standing in the narrow kitchen of our overcrowded house in Sparks, Nevada. I had just come home from a double shift at the distribution center, my boots still dusty, my back aching like I'd aged 10 years in one day. The sink was overflowing with dirty dishes, and someone had spilled juice across the counter without bothering to wipe it up. My sister, Elena, leaned against the fridge with a smirk and said, "Guess what? Number 6 is on the way." For a second, I honestly thought she was joking. Then she rubbed her stomach and waited for me to react. "I'm Renee. I'm 27. And for the last 3 years, I've been paying most of the bills and raising 5 kids who aren't mine." Elena hasn't held a steady job in years. Her boyfriend, Marcus, floats between side hustles and long afternoons on the couch. Somehow, the responsibility for rent, groceries, school supplies, and childcare all slid onto my shoulders. At first, I told myself it was temporary. Family helps family, right? But standing there in that filthy kitchen, listening to her cheerful announcement, all I could think was, how am I supposed to survive another one? I asked her quietly, "How are you planning to afford this?" Her smile faltered for half a second. Then she shrugged. "We'll figure it out, you always do." That sentence hit harder than any insult. I told her I couldn't do it anymore. I said I wasn't paying for another baby, another crib, another mountain of diapers. I said I was exhausted and drowning and that something had to change. Her face twisted instantly. She went from playful to furious in a blink. "You're selfish," she snapped. "You think you can just abandon us. This is my house too." Marcus finally looked up from his phone. "Relax," he said, like this was a minor inconvenience. "You're overreacting." That was the moment I realized no one in that house saw me as a person. I was just the safety net, the wallet, the built-in nanny. I walked into the living room and collapsed onto the edge of the couch. Toys were scattered across the floor. The kids were arguing over the TV. No one had done their homework. No one had eaten dinner. And somehow, it was all my responsibility. That night, as I lay awake listening to Marcus snore and the baby cry down the hall, a terrifying thought settled into my chest. If I don't choose myself now, I never will. But I had no idea how bad things were about to get. Because what Elena did next wasn't just irresponsible, it was illegal, and it would force me into the hardest decision of my life. The next morning started the way every morning did in that house, with chaos and silence layered on top of each other. My alarm went off at 4:30 a.m., long before the sun even considered rising. I rolled out of bed with limbs that felt like concrete. The floor was cold. My phone already had 2 missed calls from the daycare reminding me I was late on last week's payment. I didn't even have time to process that before the crying started. Leo, the youngest, was screaming in his crib. His diaper had leaked, and he was soaked through his pajamas. I scooped him up, whispering apologies that weren't mine to give. Down the hall, the older kids were arguing about cereal. Someone had eaten the last of the bread. Someone else had lost a shoe. Elena's bedroom door stayed closed. Marcus's snoring vibrated through the wall like a chainsaw. I changed Leo, started a load of laundry, packed 3 lunchboxes with whatever I could scrape together, and tried to coax Sophie into brushing her teeth. All of this happened while checking the time every 2 minutes because my shift at the warehouse started at 6. At 5:20 a.m., Elena finally shuffled into the kitchen wearing a silk robe I knew she'd ordered online last week. "You're making too much noise," she muttered. I stared at her. "Your son has been crying for 20 minutes, she shrugged. I was tired. Something ugly stirred in my chest, but I swallowed it down. I didn't have the energy for another fight. I dropped the kids at school and daycare and sped across town with my heart racing. I clocked in 2 minutes late and got a warning from my supervisor. That was my third one this month. At lunch, my phone buzzed with a notification from the power company. Final notice, disconnection in 48 hours. My hands started shaking. I had given Elena $600 last week to pay that bill. I left work early and drove home, my stomach in knots. There it was, a bright red shutoff notice taped to our front door. Inside, the trash was overflowing. Empty shopping bags were piled by the couch. A receipt stuck out of the kitchen bin. I pulled it free. $600, maternity boutique, designer dresses. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I transferred my savings, money I'd set aside to finally take night classes just to keep the lights on. Then the school called. Megan had skipped class and yelled at a teacher. Her mom hadn't answered her phone, so I left work again, lost more pay, sat in a tiny office with a 13-year-old who looked like she was breaking. "She doesn't care anymore," Megan whispered. "It's always about the new baby." That night, I came home to Marcus watching sports and the kids hungry. I made spaghetti. He took one bite and complained it was bland. "You couldn't make steak?" he asked. Something inside me went cold. I realized I wasn't just being taken advantage of, I was being erased. And just when I thought things couldn't sink any lower, my family decided to hold a meeting about my money without my permission. 3 days after Elena's pregnancy announcement, the house felt like a pressure cooker with the lid welded shut. No one was speaking to me unless they needed something. The kids tiptoed around like they were afraid to set off a bomb. Marcus kept giving me smug little looks, like he knew something I didn't. That afternoon, I was folding laundry on the living room floor when a loud, deliberate knock rattled the front door. I didn't even have to look through the peephole to know who it was. My grandmother, Dolores. She swept into the house with her purse clutched against her chest and a look of holy judgment on her face, as if she'd come to perform an exorcism. Elena was right behind her, hand resting on her stomach, wearing her best fragile mother expression. Marcus lingered in the kitchen doorway like backup muscle. "We need to talk," Grandma Dolores announced, lowering herself onto the couch like she owned the place. I stayed on the floor, still holding a sock that didn't have a matching pair. Dolores didn't waste time. "Your sister told me you're refusing to help with the new baby." "I said I'm not paying for everything anymore," I replied. "There's a difference." She waved that away. "Family doesn't count pennies." Elena sniffed dramatically. "She's always been selfish, Grandma. I'm scared. I don't know how we're going to survive." I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. Then Dolores dropped her solution. "You should sell your car." I stared at her. "What?" "It's old anyway," she said. "You can take the bus. Use the money for a down payment on a van for Elena and the kids." "That car is how I get to work," I said slowly. "It's how I go to school. It's my only transportation." She leaned forward. "You're young, you'll manage. Your sister is carrying life inside her." Something in me snapped. "That car is mine," I said. "I'm not selling it." Dolores shook her head in disappointment like I'd just confessed to a crime. "You've changed. Money made you cold." I stood up, my hands shaking. "I've given you everything. I'm done sacrificing my future." Elena's face hardened. "So that's it? You don't care about us anymore?" "No," I said. "I care about myself now." The meeting ended in icy silence. Dolores left muttering about ungrateful children. Marcus smirked. Elena slammed her bedroom door. I went to my room and checked my bank app to make sure I had enough for gas. That's when I saw it. A new credit card account. In my name, maxed out, baby furniture. I felt the blood drain from my face. She'd stolen my identity. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to a coffee shop to meet my best friend Leela. She worked as a legal assistant. She took one look at my phone and said, "This is fraud. You need to freeze your credit. Now." We spent an hour on the phone disputing charges, filing reports. "You need to get out," Leela said. "They'll do this again." I drove home in a daze. Elena was in the kitchen, furiously tapping her phone. Her purchase had just been declined. She looked up and met my eyes. For the first time, she looked afraid. Because that stolen credit card wasn't the worst betrayal. What she did after I stopped her would change everything. The house went quiet after the credit card incident, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that feels like a held breath. Elena avoided me completely. Marcus suddenly started leaving the house for hours at a time without explanation. The kids whispered more than they talked. Every creak of the floorboards made my shoulders tense. I slept with my phone under my pillow. Exactly 1 week later, I rushed home from work with a strange knot in my stomach. Not because of anything specific, just a feeling I couldn't shake. I ran to the mailbox like my life depended on it. Buried under overdue bills was a thick white envelope with a corporate logo on the corner. My hands started shaking. I opened it right there in the driveway. It was an acceptance letter for a paid internship at a tech company downtown. Systems analysis. Good pay, a real career path, tuition assistance, health insurance. I let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. This was my way out. I walked into the house smiling for the first time in years. Big mistake. Elena was standing in the kitchen like she'd been waiting for me. She saw the envelope in my hand and snatched it before I could react. "What's this?" she demanded. She scanned the letter. Her eyes narrowed. Then she ripped it in half. Slowly. Deliberately, I felt something die in my chest. "You're not going anywhere," she said flatly. "You're dropping your classes. You're quitting your job. I need you here." My mouth opened, but no words came out. Marcus looked up from the table. "Office job, that's cute," he said. "Your place is here taking care of the family." Something inside me went numb. Elena stepped closer. "If you leave, don't ever come back." I bent down and picked up the torn pieces of my future. "You don't own me," I said quietly. She screamed at me. Threats, insults, guilt, all of it. I locked myself in my room and didn't pack. Not yet. I waited until the house fell into its fake nighttime peace. Then I went into the garage. Justin, my 16-year-old nephew, stepped out from behind a stack of boxes. "Aunt Renee," he whispered, "they're planning something." He handed me a battered notebook. Dates, times, conversations he'd overheard. "They said if you try to leave, they'll report your car stolen," he said, "and Grandma said they could mess with your credit again." My heart dropped. "You need to go tonight," he said, "before they wake up." At midnight, I packed only essentials into trash bags. Documents, laptop, clothes. I slipped out through the front door. Justin helped load my car in silence. "Go," he whispered. "I'll message you if anything happens." I drove away shaking. 40 minutes later, I collapsed onto the floor of a tiny studio apartment my friend had helped me find. For the first time in years, I was alone and free. Then my phone started vibrating. 99 missed calls, hundreds of texts. Elena's voice screaming in a voicemail, "I'm calling the police. You stole from me. You will pay for this." I saved it as evidence and blocked her. But I didn't know her threat wasn't empty, because less than 48 hours later, flashing red and blue lights filled my new apartment. I had barely started to breathe again when my past came crashing through my front door. It was 2 days after I moved into the tiny studio apartment above a laundromat on the other side of town. The place smelled faintly of detergent and old cigarettes, but to me, it felt like a palace. No screaming, no demands, no guilt. I was sitting on the bare mattress, trying to read a chapter from my college textbook, when the walls suddenly lit up in red and blue. At first, I thought it was a passing emergency vehicle. Then came the pounding, not a polite knock. A hard, aggressive slam that rattled the cheap doorframe. My heart jumped into my throat. I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. 2 police officers stood outside, and right behind them, Elena. Her hair was disheveled. Her eyes were red. She was clutching her stomach and crying like she was auditioning for a movie role. I opened the door slowly with my hands visible. "Miss Renee?" the older officer asked. "Yes, we received a report alleging theft of assets and a welfare concern involving a minor." My stomach dropped. Before I could say a word, Elena pushed forward, sobbing. "She stole my money," she cried. "She took Grandma's jewelry and ran away. She abandoned my kids." It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life. "I didn't steal anything," I said. "You can search my apartment." The officer stepped inside. The room was nearly empty. A mattress, a folding chair, trash bags full of clothes, no jewelry, no cash, no baby furniture. Elena stood in the doorway, arms crossed, a smug smile twitching under her fake tears. They searched everything. Nothing. Then a breathless voice echoed from the hallway. "Stop, she's lying." I turned. Justin. He looked exhausted, like he'd run the whole way. He pushed past his mother and held up his cracked phone. "I recorded her," he said. "She hid the jewelry under her own bed to frame my aunt." The officer took the phone, hit play. There it was. Elena on video, laughing while stuffing a velvet box under her mattress. The room went dead silent. The younger officer straightened up. The older one turned slowly toward Elena. "Ma'am," he said coldly, "filing a false police report is a crime." Her face drained of color. "That video is fake," she snapped. Justin shook. "You told Grandma this would ruin her life." Elena lunged toward him. The officer stepped in front of Justin instantly. I felt my knees go weak. They escorted Elena out into the hallway. The neighbors stared. The officers took statements. They apologized to me. They filed a report for false accusations and possible identity fraud. Justin hugged me so tightly I thought my ribs would crack. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "You saved me," I said. After they left, I locked the door and slid down against it. I wasn't shaking anymore. I was done being afraid. Because that police report triggered a chain reaction that would finally expose everything I'd been hiding for years. I thought the worst was over after the police left my apartment. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Miss Renee?" a calm female voice asked. "This is Child Protective Services. We're following up on a report connected to your family." My heart started racing. The officer who'd handled Elena's false report had filed a mandatory referral. He'd been disturbed by her behavior, by Justin's desperation, by the fact that I, not their mother, had been raising those kids. CPS showed up at Elena's house unannounced, and everything I'd been covering up for years came spilling into the open. The caseworker found mold in the bathroom, empty cupboards, expired milk, piles of dirty laundry. No electricity because the bill hadn't been paid again. The kids looked exhausted, undersized, hungry. Derek, sorry Marcus, panicked. He didn't get a job, he didn't clean. He packed his bags. He took the cash Elena had hidden in a cookie jar and vanished in the middle of the night. No note, no apology, no goodbye. The caseworker documented everything. 3 days later, there was an emergency court hearing. Elena showed up crying, shaking, blaming me for everything. The judge didn't buy it. The photos spoke for themselves. The report described neglect, unsanitary conditions, emotional instability. The order came down fast. The kids were removed. Justin was separated from his siblings. Elena lost custody temporarily. She was fined for filing a false police report, 300 hours of community service. She screamed in the courtroom. She blamed me. She collapsed in hysterics. I sat in the back row and felt sick. Not relieved, not satisfied, just numb. That night, she showed up at my job. I was in a meeting when the receptionist whispered, "There's a woman in the lobby demanding to see you." I knew. She dropped to her knees in front of my coworkers, grabbed my skirt, begged, "Please, Renee, help me. I'll lose my kids. Derek left. I can't do this alone." The old guilt flared up. Then it died. "I raised them for 3 years," I said quietly. "You never did." Security escorted her out while she screamed my name. I went back to my desk, and for the first time, I didn't feel like her victim. Because walking away didn't end the story. It just started the part where I finally won. 6 months after I walked out of that house, my life barely looked recognizable. I stood in front of a floor-to-ceiling window on the 22nd floor of a downtown office building, watching the city lights flicker on as the sun dipped behind the mountains. My reflection in the glass startled me for a moment, not because I looked different on the outside, but because I looked lighter. Like someone had finally taken a 100-pound weight off my back. The internship I'd almost lost because of Elena turned into a full-time job offer. Junior systems analyst, real salary, benefits, a future. I moved into a clean, modern apartment 10 minutes from work. The lights stayed on. The fridge stayed full. The only mess I cleaned up belonged to me. Silence no longer scared me. It healed me. The updates about my family trickled in through distant relatives and the occasional message from Justin. Elena was working nights at a grimy laundromat in a rough part of town to pay off her fines and community service fees. Her hair had gone gray at the temples. Her back hurt. Her hands were always cracked and sore. The irony didn't escape me. She'd finally gotten the hard job she always thought she was too good for. Grandma Dollars had a mild stroke shortly after the custody hearing. Without my money to cover her medications or Elena's help to take care of her, she ended up in a state-run nursing facility. She tried to call me. I didn't answer. The kids were the only part of that world I couldn't leave behind emotionally. Justin was placed with a foster family that actually encouraged his academic interests. He emailed me every week. I met with a financial advisor and set up an education trust fund for him and his siblings. The money couldn't be touched until they turned 18. Elena could never access a cent. It was my way of loving them without destroying myself again. Sometimes guilt tried to crawl back into my chest. Then I remembered the torn internship letter, the stolen credit card, the fake police report. the look on Elena's face when she realized she'd lost control over me. And the guilt evaporated. I wasn't cruel. I was free. But the most shocking moment of closure didn't come from success. It came from one final confrontation I never expected. I thought I'd already had my ending. I was wrong. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, almost a year after I left that house. I was walking back to my office after grabbing coffee, scrolling through emails on my phone, thinking about a presentation I had to give the next day. I didn't see her at first. I only heard my name. Renee. My stomach tightened instantly. I looked up. Elena stood across the sidewalk from me, thinner, paler, and wearing a faded hoodie that hung off her shoulders. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun. Her eyes looked hollow in a way I'd never seen before. For a second, I almost didn't recognize her. Then she started walking toward me. Every instinct in my body told me to turn around and run, but something in me stayed rooted to the pavement. She stopped 3 feet away. "I know you blocked me," she said quietly. "I had to come in person." I crossed my arms. "What do you want?" Her lips trembled. "I lost the custody review. They won't give the kids back yet. They say I need more stability, a better place, more income." I didn't say anything. She swallowed. "I need help." There it was. The same script, different stage. "You're doing well now," she continued. "You've got a real job, a nice apartment. You could co-sign a lease for me, or lend me some money, just until I get back on my feet." I stared at her. I felt sad, but not weak. "I already helped you," I said calmly. "For years." She took a step closer. "They're your family too. Don't you care what happens to them?" My jaw tightened. "I care about them enough not to fund another disaster," I said. "There's a difference." Her eyes flashed with anger. "You think you're better than me now?" she snapped. "No," I replied. "I think I'm done being your life raft." Her voice rose. "If you don't help me, I'll lose them forever." I took a slow breath. "Then you need to change your life," I said. "Not mine." She started crying, real crying this time, not performance tears, not manipulation. Just raw desperation. And for one dangerous moment, my old guilt tried to rise again. Then I remembered everything, and I stepped back. "I love those kids," I said quietly, "but I will never save you again." Her face hardened. "You'll regret this," she hissed. I shook my head. "No, I won't." I walked away. She didn't follow. She didn't scream. She just stood there, finally alone with the consequences of her choices. That night, I sat on my couch in my quiet apartment and watched the city lights flicker outside my window. I checked my email. Justin had sent me a message. I got into the advanced placement program. "Thank you for believing in me." I smiled. I closed my laptop. And for the first time, I knew with absolute certainty, walking away wasn't the cruel choice. It was the necessary one. Because sometimes the real victory isn't revenge, or success, or even justice. It's choosing yourself when the people who raised you never did.